You're listening to the Be Better Off Show by Kelly+Partners.
Welcome, Tony Nash, the founder and CEO of Booktopia, to the Be Better Off Show, where we talk about how private business owners can be better off, meaning healthier, wealthier, wiser, and not forgetting to have some fun. So it's really a great pleasure to have you here today. And I guess I'd love to start with this amazing business that you've built. How did you come to found Booktopia in a very challenging, obviously, industry?
Look, it was a little side project. We were, when I say we, I'm in business with my brother and my sister and my brother-in-law. And so back in 2003, we were an SEO, internet marketing consultancy, working for companies to get their websites to the top of Google, driving traffic. And we had done a job to get Angus and Robertson's website to the top of Google. And back in that day, they outsourced their website and fulfillment to a company in Sydney that did it for them. And we had a meeting with that company because they not only did it for Angus and Robertson, they did it for 80 bookstores' websites. And my brother had this idea of pitching that, remember the good job we did for Angus and Robertson, getting them to the top of Google. You got 80 other clients. Why don't you introduce us? And the owner said, nah, not interested. I said, you're not interested in making more money? He said, look, it's not our business. We manage bookstore websites and we fulfill those orders. That's how it all works. And I said, well, how does it work? And they said, we've built a platform. You give us the name of your store, and within 10 minutes, we can have a website up and running with 1 million books on there. And if you sell anything, we pay a commission. And I said, well, that sounds interesting. And he goes, yeah, I know it might, but no internet-only business has made anything out of it. It's all been off the back of a traditional bookstore that wanted a website. And I thought, well, I went away from that meeting and I said to my brother, I wouldn't mind giving that book thing a bit of a go. And so I came up with the name Booktopia. He handled the finances. He said, you can work on Booktopia. It's got to be outside of hours. And because we've got all this consulting work that we're doing. And so I worked on it from 9 p.m. till 2 a.m. every night. And he gave me a budget of $10 per day to start the company. He's very generous, my brother. And so I took my $10, and because I was a Google ad expert, I didn't go for search terms like books or bookshop or bookstore because I knew I'd just burn through the money straight away. I wrote ads specifically for authors and titles and sent them deep into the site. So someone had already used Google to do a search, and then I would point them to those books. And it took 3 days to sell my first book. By the end of the month, I had done $2,000. By the fourth month, I was up to $30,000 a month. By the end of the year, $100,000 a month. By the end of 2 years, $200,000 a month. So it was after a few years that we decided to part ways with that company, build our own website. Because prior to being an internet marketing consultancy, we were a software business, internet software company. So we felt confident we could build our own site. Prior to that, we were also in recruitment for the computing industry. So that was our background. And so we built our own site, took a warehouse in Sydney, about 500 square meters, bought some shelves on eBay, hired a warehouse manager, rang the publishers, told them it's Booktopia. We've been going for 3 years and we're turning over a couple of million a year. Never heard of you. So we had to set up accounts and just get going. So we still did our consulting work till about 2 years after that. So 5 years into Booktopia, we were doing consulting work. So that's how we were paying for our salaries. Yep. And then after that point, we moved to 2,000 square meters in Sydney and Lane Cove in a warehouse and office. And so we could stop doing the consulting because Booktopia had got big enough. And it just kept growing. So today we've got about 14,000 square meters. We'll do about 170 million in revenue, about 260 employees, build all our own software, $10 million of stock, $10 million of automation. We're just adding another 12 million at the moment, so that we will be up to 22 million in automation. And 5 million Australians have bought from us, and we've donated over $1 million in cash and books to literacy projects in Australia. And so,
and where's the 14,000 square meter warehouse now located?
We're in Lidcombe, very close, about a 15-minute walk from the Olympic Stadium in Sydney.
Yeah. And how like when you look back now, I think you did you do a cap raise last year?
Actually, it was 4 months ago in January.
Yep.
That was our first.
That's right. So you've really bootstrapped this business from scratch.
Sure.
I think the timing was fortuitous, I think, in January to get that sorted out.
Yes.
Which is, very happy with that because I'm a passionate lover of books. So and always have been. I just think that if you teach somebody to read, you open, not just the whole world to them, but all of the worlds of all time. And I think that's a very special thing you can do for someone. So I've always been so pro bookshop, pro online bookshop, Amazon, whoever wants to sell anyone a book. What are the big lessons you think for, our firm, Kelly+Partners, we look after about nearly 8,000 private business owners, so small business owners, and some of those small businesses turn over up to $1 billion a year, but they're privately held and they have those family ideas that I'm sure you and your brother share. What do you think the big lessons are that Booktopia has taught you? And I guess in two parts, those lessons that perhaps you thought you'd learned up until January, and then the lessons that you think you're learning now and what that means for businesses going forward.
Mm-hmm. So when I started my very first company back in the mid-90s, an IT recruitment business on the internet, when I would go out and tell people I'm an internet recruitment agency, and they'd go, "What's the internet?" That early on, I engaged a guy who was a marketing expert to make sure that I knew what I needed to do to have my own business. He was very successful, and so I paid for some one-on-one time with him. And after 2 sessions, I realized I knew more than him, and it was a complete waste of money. And so that gave me a lot of confidence, because if he was a marketing expert and I felt like I knew more than him, then I was, I didn't question my own intuition and my own gut experience. But he did say one thing to me in the very beginning, which I did not ever consider before, that was really important. And he said, "Don't worry about your P&L. Don't worry about your balance sheet. Just focus on your cash flow statement. Make sure you got enough cash to pay for everything." And so in the beginning, that was really monumental, because all of our growth has been, and how do you mentioned before, bootstrapping your business. It's because we worked out ways to generate more cash, which would then fund the next whatever we need to do, hire more people, invest in more automation, hold more stock. So having more money at the end of the month was key. And not to say that we've always been like that. Sometimes we've had more month than at the end of the money, but it's been a kind of moving down down the line a little bit further and further through that. So that was critical. And I speak to a lot of budding entrepreneurs or people that are running their businesses, and I said, "So just tell me about your cash. Where's the money coming from?" They've got an idea, and okay, how are people going to hand over money? Why would they hand over money, and why would they trust you to do that? And quite often that's a component that a lot of people don't necessarily always think about. They may think that it's just going to come by magic, or that's what happens. You have a company and those things
Money
work.
turns up. Yep.
Yeah. When it comes to COVID, we've done, basically for us, because it's books, and Amazon focused on essentials, and not to say that books has been a high priority for them from launching in Australia, but it's felt like we've got the spinnaker up, it's a hurricane behind us, and we're all on the grinders going as hard as we can, because we are literally 80% up year on year at the moment for the last few months. So, and
that's one good thing about isolation. It may be encouraging people to read, and people that read end up more cluey than people that don't.
Of course. Look, books has proven to be recession-proof back in 2008, 2009, and pandemic-proof in 2020. Books is something that people turn to for education, for relaxation, for escape, and we were well positioned to take advantage of that. Sure, the capital raise really helped us, and everyone feel extremely comfortable. I think we still would have been able to navigate our way through, but just having a lot of excess cash, really being able to get access to probably more stock than we would normally have taken at this time of year was really helpful. We had to pivot as well, because we're very big in tertiary, and when universities didn't kick in to the level that we were expecting, everything flipped to fiction and children's and biographies and so forth. So we had to we really had to adjust our buying and our efforts. So that was definitely good timing. But I think with COVID, it was very important for us to do fortnightly forecasting. We're still doing it. We're constantly looking what's happening next week and the week after, and because we've got algorithms that have compression, because as soon as things come off, we cannot afford to have our algorithms reorder based on the last month or so. We need to actually be readjusting for when things start to drop off. So we're constantly looking at it at the moment.
Yeah, it's a great and look, just for the people that might be listening, you know, obviously I'm an accountant, and I can tell, Tony, with your background, you've had that great advice early on from a marketing man who said, you know, you need to understand how cash flow works. And so often in businesses, they can grow broke, in that they grow and grow. Their cash flow cycle, when they have to put the money out for stock or for time, they don't get paid faster than they have to pay. Yep. That's called people's working capital cycle, their cash cycle. And that means as they grow, they need more cash, and they can actually go broke through growing, whereas most people think that growing is just a great idea, you know, no matter what. So I think that attentiveness to cash flow, the comment I've made about bootstrapping, that's the idea for any listeners that haven't heard, you know, that insider lingo, if you like. That means growing your business with your own capital, be that as small as that might be that the $10 a day, was it, Tony? Or $10 a day your brother might give you, you know, respect for, you know, every time you've got to go and raise capital, then somebody else is going to take a chunk of your business, and that might make sense, but early on it's good if you can learn how to run your cash. And then you come to a crisis like now, and, you know, to hear this is a significant business, turning over $170 million a year, but they're looking at their cash every 2 weeks, and notwithstanding the automation, you've got to get your algorithms to be working, you know, in real time effectively, rather than just looking backwards. And so that, I guess we're coming now to a new normal. But let me divert into books. You know, is there in your team, is there a passion for books, and what do you see as the impact, I guess, of literacy and books generally?
So first of all, I'll intro my answer with this. Right from day one, we asked this one question, and we've asked it every day: what do our customers want? Now, if you're not a book person, and I'm not much of a reader, I actually listen to more books than I do reading. I read when I'm on holidays, and so I don't have the patience to sit there and read to focus on the business. But so by asking that question, what do our customers want? And then finding out those answers and delivering it for them, holding more stock, having a customer service team. Like right from the very beginning on day one, we had our phone number on our website. And back in 2004, there was a lot of companies that just simply said, you know, fill out this form and hit submit. But we were there to answer calls. And now we have 30, 35 people in our call center. We've got 24 in Sydney and another, I think 10 or 12 in the Philippines, supporting those guys, doing chat and first level support. So we also have a book team. So people who are book experts who've managed certain categories and understand their categories and their buying and what the customers are looking for in those categories. So we have lots of people with book experience and a love of books working for us. And I think that needs to come, that's fairly obvious through the website. If you're authentically into books, like, I'll give you some examples. An algorithm from Amazon will never be able to work out that a debut author is going to win Book of the Year, which it did 2 years ago, Trent Dalton's Boy Swallows Universe. But our guys had read it. They loved it. They knew it was going to be a smash hit. And it was on the top of our website. It was being promoted early. We had massive amount of pre-orders for it, and the guy had never written a book before, but we knew it was going to. Well, my guys knew it was going to be huge, and this is that authenticity can still come through on a site. You walk into a good shop, and you can still tell straight away whether they know their stuff or not, and I think that's what we really focused on, and it comes back to what do our customers want, and we hired people where others would have not. We hired experts. We held that stock. We've got 130,000 titles in stock. The biggest ever border stores had 100,000 titles in stock. Your local bookstore will have 12,000. Your Big W will have 2,000. And so it's
a real commitment to the customer. It's almost a publishing company type mindset of having genuine category experts, library style, who have a huge passion that can reflect that, and that, I guess, Jobsian idea of the intersection of technology and humanities. Seems like you guys are really doing that.
Correct.
It's very interesting. Where do you get your inspiration from? Who are the people that have most inspired you in business?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I don't have any business. Anyone that I've aspired to or have been inspired by. I enjoy listening to their stories. I enjoy being inspired by them in the moment. But I'm very horizon point driven. So, and what I loved about the book industry, it was a real tough industry. There's 27 million active books. To understand all the IT, to have a website that can actually be responsive enough, fast enough. So because of our IT background, we didn't know what we needed to know, but we knew that we could address that. To have that internet marketing experience, because when if you're outsourcing to an agency, you may not get the same level of curation and intent and being enough. So there was a lot of aspects to the book industry that I could see had a very high barrier to entry. And so by focusing on that and being very single-minded around it, was really all I needed to get the results that we were looking for. I definitely enjoy listening to audiobooks by business people. I've listened to Simon Sinek, Jim Collins, Good to Great, Daniel Pink, all these, Malcolm Gladwell. I like to just kind of try and have those automatically be in the background of my consciousness. I don't necessarily trying to have them as right in the front of my consciousness. All right, this is what I have to do today. I just like things to be as intuitive and as automatic as I can, and I'll consider those things, and then I'll try and forget about where I found them from, and then just try and make them automatically mine. And that's what you need, actually. You do need that, because when the stuff's hitting the fan, you've got to be able to draw on your you can't be analytical. You've got to be spontaneous, instantaneous. You've got to be present. You've got to make decisions on the fly. I mean, COVID is it. I mean, you've literally got to be capturing information. When do you want your people to work from home? Yeah. Yep. Should we? One of my team said all of our companies that are. They didn't say like all of our competitors, but they said something. All of our industry is working from home. I said, who's that? And they said, all the publishers. I said, we're not a publisher. I said, we're an online retailer. And it was only within a few days, things were moving so quickly that everyone was working from home. But we've all had to make decisions on the fly, and I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed that the testing environment where you go, okay, I've got no idea, but let's
I've done 4 of these interviews in the last 2 days, Tony, as I do 3 or 4 a week, and some extraordinary people like yourself, and every one of them, it's a distinction I would make, is that every single one of them is energized by what's happening. They're engaged. They are making decisions, and they're, in my expression, really watching the ball. with an intensity that I think is largely people like your habit. But they can see that there's in a crisis, there's an opportunity to change, to adapt, to ask that question harder. What does my customer really want right now? And so it's quite interesting. It's quite noticeable.
But it's a bit bittersweet for us because although we are in demand and books are in demand, there's other e-commerce players that we know very well where their revenue dropped by 90%. I mean, I know publishers in the travel industry that their revenue has dropped by 90%, and so to have this much volume going through, there's a fair amount of humility and graciousness. What has been interesting to see some of the millennials in our organization who have perhaps, I won't say they're entitled, but that sense of strength that they don't. Of course, business is good. Of course, there's an expectation. I can change jobs. Everything is. It's not like how I grew up, and to see them have the gratitude for, oh my God, I'm just so lucky to be in an industry where there's, I'm in online, it's just, not only that, I'm in a category of books that people want. And I think that's what's been
open, and it hasn't been shut down, and that they've got some leadership that are, determined to get through it.
That's right. So there's been a lot of awareness from all levels of positions within the business, from the distribution center through to management, through to different roles, where what you perhaps took for granted before, all of a sudden, with it being shaken up a little, we're getting delivered a bit more than we would normally get right now. But at the same time, friends of theirs, family members have lost their jobs and now dealing with no income coming through, and so I think it's been this reality process of getting people back to do not take what you've got for granted, and what do you need to focus on has been hugely important for everyone.
Yeah, and that's that message there of humility and graciousness in the context of the maelstrom of what's going on. We've had people who have great team members whose partners have come home and have lost their jobs. We've seen clients who've built businesses over decades that have been shut down and experiencing real hardship through absolutely no fault of their own. And so, a little bit of the ancients were always sort of looking to the gods because they never really took whatever for granted. They knew things could change. That probably had been less obvious to people over the last certainly 5 years than it might have been in previous generations. I started work off the back of the 92 recessions in 91, 92 recession in 1993. And so I kind of thought I've always had that's how it is type of mindset, which is great. Future of the business, where would you like to see the business beyond you? Is it a 100-year business, a 20-year business? What's the play? What's the vision?
I don't even think about that, funnily enough. It's the next horizon point. So for me, is to get to 300 million and then to 500 million. So what some of the things we've been doing, yes, we're an online book retailer, but in the last few years, we also set up a book distribution business. So publishers are now appointing us as their Australian distributor and representative, and we're selling into bookshops as well as to ourselves, as well as to other online retailers. So that's been a great initiative. And then in the last year, we've become a publisher. So actually going out and winning ANZ rights or taking Australian authors and publishing their books. And so to continue to go deeper and deeper. The thing about all businesses and all the businesses that you consult for and talk to, there's only 100% of the pie. There's never 99%. There's never 101%. There's always 100% of the pie, and everyone gets to divide up from the manufacturer to the seller. The problem with books is there's been too many people along the way from the author taking their slice, and by us being able to be a publisher, we can give more to the author, and therefore also make ourselves available to the consumers with the same product. And that's quite interesting to me. So to focus more and more on books. In fact, I think, I know we're going to close shortly. I think this is an important last message, is that about 5 or 6 years ago, I started doing research around the world, kind of figured that Amazon at some point was going to come to Australia, which they did a few years later. So a few years ago from now. And I thought, why is it that some companies in North America and Europe, where Amazon is in a mature state, are they thriving and doing, why are they doing really well? Everywhere I looked, it's because they did one thing and focused on that and did it extremely well. And so we were at the time thinking about how can we expand out into other, products that could go through the distribution center and still we could give it to Australia Post or our courier companies and deliver. And so it was just like, no, we've got to get more into books. So that's when we became a distributor and then ultimately a publisher. And the more that you are very, very good at one thing and do that extremely well, the easier it is for customers to know who you are. Why do they come to you? Why do they want to buy from you? How they can trust you. And so it's easier to make business decisions when you're so clear around what your DNA is and what your intention is. And so that was, I think that's a really important point to understand, because Booktopia is succeeding right in this pandemic, but it's everything that we had done before, focusing on book. They're so lucky to be there now. No, well, hold on a second. What were they doing? Because there's other book retailers out there now who are also getting increased volumes through their websites. They simply just cannot pick the books and pack the books because they have not invested in all the systems to do that. And so they've actually frustrating their customers right now. And so it's really, I think that's really, really important for to understand who you are and what you do and do that very well.
A great point, Tony. It's a great point to end on. A lot of our clients and people that tune into the podcast have heard me say it before. There's a great interview of Anthony Pratt a couple of years ago in the Fin Review magazine, long format interview. And they say to him, "Now, Anthony, what did your dad teach you? He's the richest man in the country. What's it all about?" And he said, "Well, we just worked out that we were okay at boxes. And if I could attribute our success to any one thing, it would be that we've stuck to boxes, and that it's easier to teach your kids how to, run the box company than to teach them how to run X number of dollars, in the financial markets." And very interestingly, when there's a documentary on Netflix called Inside Bill's Mind, and it's on Bill Gates, and they've got Bill Gates and Warren Buffett sitting next to each other, archival footage, and they asked both of them, if you could put your success down to one thing, what would it be? And they both almost in unison say focus. We found our thing and we focused, and we just focused on it for a long, long time. And then Buffett says, look, if you're okay at something, quite good at something for quite a long time, it ends up quite well. So look, it's a great way to end. And Tony, I really appreciate you during the crisis making time. I know how busy you are. I think for all of our clients and friends and listeners out there, there's some great messages there. And as I'm inclined to do at the end of this show, I always say, have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Be Better Off Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
Have a great day.